economic growth. The session would focus on exploring the economic impact of the gaming industry on Viksit Bharat, including job creation, revenue generation, and investments opportunity. May I request Raghav Anand, Senior Partner, EY, to join us on the stage, please. I would request Mr. Rajan Navani once again to join us on the stage, President IDGS, Chairman, Managing Director, JetSynthesys and Jetline Group. We also request Sohn, Vice President IDGS, CEO KRAFTON India, to join us on stage for this session, please. Thank you.
Thank you, and a wonderful good morning. Thank you, everyone. Special congratulations, I think, to CII and IDGS for organizing really something that's close to heart, a gaming conference with developers, gamers, and all of them in one room. So wonderful to be here. And in the next 40 minutes, what we're going to do is really look at gaming not just as an industry, but how is that contributing to the overall economic growth in India. And then we would probably head over to a panel where we'll clearly discuss how this is affecting not just the industry in itself, but how is it creating jobs, paying back to the entire nation from that perspective. So I'll just kick it off with a short presentation talking about how the industry is faring and how it is growing from an economic perspective. So gaming can be divided in multiple ways, but if you really look at it, you will find that this industry over the next 3 years is going to hyper grow at about 21% plus. While it is dominated by mobiles, and obviously because of the penetration and so on and so forth, we are going to see this industry grow both in terms of the gamer penetration as well as the content penetration from that perspective. A country which already has close to about 455 million plus gamers is never a question as to why the industry will not thrive in a place like that. But there are specific things that are happening in the next 3 years, which I believe will further grow this industry. Now, I've been looking at this industry for the last 20 years, and like Sohn said, we've seen this entire growth happening. There were back in the days, we were talking about how India will be only a development hub, but today when you have about close to 500 million gamers, what that is doing internationally, and when I speak to a lot of global publishers, they were not hitherto interested in India previously because the revenue numbers were small. But now they're taking a keen interest because as the number of gamers grow, and with it, the other thing that is growing is the payment ecosystem. 15 years back, we were used to talk about 38 million credit cards and how that can never power a gaming ecosystem. Today, the payment part is growing. The number of gamers are growing, which means that it is possible to be, monetizing this economy profitably. And that is bringing content interest into the country. And we know in any media entertainment segment, if the content comes in, if the right kind of gaming titles come in, and the players get interested and things grow from that perspective. The other thing which is happening largely from a mobile gaming perspective is also the growth of the bandwidth. And Sohn again said that in Korea, it is the bandwidth that powered the entire thing. And today with 5G penetration growing, the mobile going ecosystem is also growing. But if I cut this entire thing differently, you'll see a very interesting thing. Previously, the gaming ecosystem in India was largely based on free games being downloaded and advertising and other revenue aspects coming in. In-app purchases, which globally used to be about 85%, was hardly there in India. But today, you're seeing in the next 2 to 3 years, in-app purchases is going to be one of the largest ecosystems. And that's primarily because of what I said before, the payment ecosystem kicking in and that making that possible. As in-app purchases grow, the incentive for making mid-core titles and slightly more evolved titles become more prominent, because then there is a way of constantly monetizing it from that perspective. And what used to be a casual or a hyper-casual ecosystem, largely because you have mobile phones with low-end memory, so you would really make casual games, is now evolving. And that's why you will see, if you look at the most monetized games, it is really social games and shooty games which are getting more prominent from that perspective. So, guys, what we are witnessing today is a shift in the ecosystem, a slow shift, but the shift is going towards enabling a gaming ecosystem which will be profitably monetized, which will also have penetration across the board from that perspective. Now, if I again cut this differently, you will see that there are few trends which are very promising from an India perspective. You will see that there is a lot of AI being used in the non-playing characters, and there is a lot of excitement around that, because when I used to be discussing with some of, and I used to be working with some of the companies which were in the large AAA gaming pipeline, in those days the most important thing there was that how do I create a dynamic pipeline, right? And how do I create, in animation we have set characters, rendering, all that happening, but in the gaming world, how do I do that dynamically? Today with AI, there is a lot of push on how I can adapt to the behavior of the gamer and change the experience. So if you're playing it and somebody else is playing it, the experience that you get will be completely different from that perspective. The second thing which we have found in India in particular, and this has happened with digital, this has happened with multiple other things, as you go regional, as you go deeper, and if you can make titles which connect to that region, then there is an extra 500 million. That's something that we'll discuss, Rajan. How do we bring the next 500 million into this gaming ecosystem? And Rajan also mentioned in the previous comment that it is not just about the mobile games. We are also looking at the hardware. How do we grow console gaming in India? And back in the day, 20 years back, there were dedicated gaming hardware distribution companies that grew out, right? But they couldn't expand because the per capita GDP here was different. Today and the next 20 years with India growing, we are going to see a completely different ecosystem altogether. And the other very interesting thing about India is we are also looking at alternatives. There is the Play Store that's doing well, but there are constraints for the smaller publishing community to get onto that and spend the money and so on and so forth. So can ONDC be the next store? Can there be government-powered stores that are happening which are India-specific? Are also discussions which are happening. So if that happens, the kind of ecosystem and exposure that you will get will be completely different. Now, apart from the usual gaming segments that we talk about, PC, console, mobile, and back in the day we used to talk about MMORPG as a different category, what I'm very excited about is about cloud gaming. Now, of course, it's the very early days. There are the game publishers doing cloud pass, but just imagine this. If you are a parent and you were to get your child into gaming and you were to buy a 50,000 plus console, and then you have 4,000, 6,000 rupees per game. So hardly people used to play a couple of games from that perspective. But with cloud gaming and a game pass, we are seeing two different things happening, and I don't know how far this will go in the ecosystem. On one side, we are talking to companies which are making the hardware agnostic. So the processing power is on the cloud, so all you need is a screen. So your own PC and laptop could suddenly become the best gaming device from that perspective. And on the other hand, you get for 499 or 500 rupees, you get access to thousands of games. If that happens in India, I think that is going to be a completely earth-shattering moment from that perspective. The other thing which we have not talked about enough is the smart TV universe, right? Smart TV universe, I think, is going to bring in the entire family into gaming in some ways. We are having about 22 million households today in the smart TV, and it is expected to grow to about 90 to 120 million ecosystems in the next 3 to 5 years. Now imagine you have 100 million plus homes connected on smart TV with broadband, with gaming and cloud gaming going on to it. That's going to be a completely different ecosystem. What all of that does is how, and that's what we are here to discuss, how does that affect the entire economic landscape? And this is a typical framework we use to say what is the core impact, what is the primary, tertiary impact in the economy. On the core, you will find that the industry, both in terms of the development it is doing for the international houses or for the games being developed for India in itself, is contributing to more than 100K plus jobs, and that is a huge figure in itself. But it is also has attracted about $210 billion of FDI into this country in the last 3 to 4 years. So there is significant investment starting to happen in this country also. And that means there are about almost 1,400 plus companies in this startup ecosystem. So all of that is the core impact that it is creating. But when that core impact spills over and you start looking at the larger ecosystem, number of streams on YouTube talking about gaming and the creator economy around that. We did a study some time back on the impact of creator economy on the overall fabric of India. You will see that the creative economy plus the content created plus the job created brings in an additional set of almost 600 billion INR impact into the entire ecosystem. And then add to that the other third ring of hardware being created, taxes being paid out, and manufacturing is being set up, distribution happening, and all of that into the pool. We are seeing almost 1,000 billion, almost a trillion INR of contribution of this gaming sector into the larger economy. And that's something, guys, we should be very proud of. Because it's not just about fun and games, it's about really powering this economy from that perspective. So we will talk more about this, but just to quickly look at some of the things that are happening over the last 2 years, we are seeing significant deals that are coming in, 85 to 90 funding deals, and that is going into the non-RMG sector, to the real gaming sector, which is talking about consoles, gaming, or building the entire fan base around that for digital and so on and so forth. And there are esports initiatives which are getting funded. There are AAA game development that is getting funded. At the same time, we would see that when I talk to investors, they're very, very interested in anything esports. They are looking at cloud gaming. They're also looking at games which can be developed out of India, mid-core, which could make a significant difference when you go global from that perspective. So these are areas of interest. Of course, they would complain that they don't have enough avenues to invest because they need companies which are scaled and which has the talent to deliver that from that perspective. And that's what is our job in this room, to make sure that that money flows into the right direction. Now, that said, it's not all hunky-dory, we all know that. There are significant amount of challenges that we need to work through. Like I said, 20 years back, when I was in a conference like this, I was opening, and we had written the report on gaming and animation in India, and we said that gaming would probably follow the IT trajectory and become one of the largest services market in this country. Animation to a certain extent has done that. Gaming is lagging. And the reason it's lagging is it's not easy to bring a AAA talent to India. It's not easy to put a AAA pipeline into India. We're doing well in the mobile gaming segment, but we need more support for the game development studios here, right? The right kind of access, and this is not something new. We've done that in various other sectors, in VFX, animation, where all the places the same issue used to be there. A top-end DOP will never come down to India, and all of that has changed. So why not do that in India? So we need a lot more on that. We need to address the talent gap, not just at the development front, but also in the executive production front. And how do you actually design a game? How do you do pre-production? How do you develop a pipeline and sustain that from that perspective? Ashutosh was here and he was speaking about some of the things that the government is doing. There is a lot of AVGC policies. Almost 14 to 15 states have announced AVGC policies in the last year or so. So there is a lot of, and there are a lot of them having funding ecosystems for developers. So that's something that we should really look at. The other thing which I'm seeing very much is lacking in India is that we don't have a good publishing ecosystem. So if I'm a developer and if I develop a game and I put in some money, I don't have the ecosystem of a publisher who will take it and say, I'll make it global, right? And the lack of a good publisher means that the development companies are burdened with the marketing of the game, the packaging of the game. It's not really their core, right? and then we don't see indigenous developments coming out of India. So having a good publishing ecosystem is also something that is very important. Uh, and finally, one of the things I'm seeing very interestingly here is in the last, say 6 months or so, I've been in touch with some of the biggest Bollywood productions. You know, some of them are about 200 million plus, the largest Bollywood productions ever to come out. And they are all talking about a AAA global release. Now, what's happened is, suddenly Bollywood has become, or Bollywood or Tollywood, or you take the Indian cinema ecosystem, has started to cross over. China is a good box office. US is a fantastic box office for Indian movies. So they are saying, if that's a box office, why can't I create a game and substitute that, because I've already done my marketing from that perspective. So there is a lot that is happening. I'll just want to, before I start the panel, and these are some thought starters for the panel in itself, just to put a few stats of the survey that we did. 48% of the respondents said we play about an hour plus of a gaming session daily. And that's wonderful. If you have that kind of a engagement in any of the media entertainment segments, that would be fantastic, right? And 55% of the people really discover something on the Play Store, and based on the ratings and based on the reviews and so on and so forth. So the marketing is really based on what is happening there, and we don't have alternative channels of marketing here. And 60% were playing multiplayer games, which is also very heartening in that sense. Also, they also said that there was an increase of about 43% from the last year when we did this, of people playing games, which means that the amount of people getting interested into the gaming world is significantly increasing. And as smartphone penetrations grow, as we go ahead from the 650 million, reach 900 million, I would presume we would have about 700 million plus gamers in this country. So that would be a fabulous universe to tap into. So in all, what we are seeing is that there is an ecosystem which is in the point of inflection. There is about 21% growth that could happen. The monetization mechanisms are coming in, but few things are holding the engines in terms of the publisher ecosystem not being there, the development talent not being there. How do we sort of put all of that together, and what is now, what we said is 1 trillion INR contribution to the overall economic direct and indirect. How do we increase that and make it about a 5 trillion of a contribution is what we would probably want to discuss. And I'm very glad we have probably the two most prominent guys to answer that, Rajan and Sohn. So I'll just head over, guys, and then probably we can kickstart this discussion. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Consultant can't start without stats, right? I mean, I had to put up some things, but great to have you guys here. Now, if I look at those circles of gaming contributing to the Indian economy, and let's start the discussion with the core aspects of the gamers itself. 455 million plus gamers, and mobile centric, and there is a lot of contribution happening there. However, we all know that the economic impact of gaming could be much more if we bring in PC, console, all those ecosystems in. So really, to grow this core gaming universe, what do you think we should do more, and what is going to be the driver of that?
No, thank you, firstly, Raghav, for sharing some great insights around the industry. I think we have a very unique advantage because, you know, one thing is there, gaming as an alignment around passion and engagement. I mean, you saw the words being used, right? Yes. The word friend, right? Sohn used it, I used, many others. I'm saying everybody here, you know, you talk of a community that is connected around something that you enjoy, you have fun together. I think it's a very big, important thing that we miss. So when you talk of a friend, what is a friend there? He's there to support one another, right? And we see that, right? You see sport, you see gaming. It creates that community feeling, which is very few industries actually have a potential to create, and around a demography that is youthful. So it is a long-term community engagement, right? So it's the starting of, you know, maybe when people get their first check, or they're just graduating, or they're coming, and then it's a journey that you take together. So if we keep all of that in mind, I think it's also a way to bring a country together. Like we say, cricket unites India like nothing else does. You know, gaming actually has a very similar potential. And you know, and therefore the multiple layers that you talked about and we've discussed, right? You know, you come in at the top of the funnel as a casual gamer. So you talk 455 million people playing some game, spending some time, you know, engaging in some way, contributing either by watching an ad or a little bit of in-app purchases. But then it is a core 100 million people who apparently would, you know, spend money in a game, you know, and actually contribute more significantly because they're more involved in that. And then there is a million, you know, who are your esports players, who are the best gamers, and, you know, who will go on to become champions, whose life and livelihoods, recognition in society all depends on that. Now, across this funnel from 455 to, you know, less than a million, there are multiple opportunities, as we talked, for the economy to benefit, right? And this can come in, like what we said, in terms of livelihoods and skills, right from the game development, which requires multiple skills, some of which will be coming at mass, you know, and scale in India, but some which India will have to go and leverage the world. I mean, we have to accept that we are, you know, 50 years late in the game, and there are game developers, designers, you know, product game economy experts globally who have a very different level of experience. So I think it's a balance between that, but the strength lies in the IP creation. So while we will, you know, contribute to the economy through jobs, through livelihoods, and, you know, what that could mean, the value in terms of creating IPs from India, I think that is unique. And I think in our interaction, even as IDGS with the Minister of both INB and IT, you know, Ashwini Vaishnav, there were two things that came out, you know, very clearly, is that the value of this industry needs to become significant as a make in India, for India and for the world, right? And I think that's the unique opportunity, and that value can, you know, be exponential, you know, than the small cumulative. And if we look at the market cap of tomorrow's leading gaming companies out of India, they could be pretty significant when it comes to where it is today. And an opportunity for young people to engage as well, even as owners and investors. And there's so much technology that is changing. And the second, of course, was how do we, you know, get more and more people to derive livelihoods. And, you know, when we look at esports, you have a production capacity, you have a caster, you said you talked of creators, you have influencers. Brands can't reach these audiences today, and they need the gamer again, or they need that, you know, that creator or the best player there to do that. So if you look at, I think the direct and the indirect triggers to the economy are very significant, and I think that's the journey that over the next 5 years that excites us about India.
Wonderful. I think that's a fantastic opening comment, because you said, Rajan, you made 2-3 very important things. One, how the community is knit. It is almost a, and in many other segments of media entertainment, we talk about forming a community. There's already a community. So there is a fantastic thing. And there are various layers, like you said, between the 1 million pros to the 100 million core gamers to the 500 million odd. So that's, again, fantastic. And the fact that that then triggers the entire ecosystem from that perspective. Now, this is wonderful. The other thing that India also does is that India produces for the globe, right? And the development, of course, it's largely mobile-centric at this point in time. We have not been able to do that in PC consoles, but the 2-3 things are there. There is obviously the arbitrage, which is almost 65, 68, 70% of arbitrage between doing that on the shores of the US to here. Then you also have the larger development talent, because gaming pipeline needs both art and code. And also the fact that this entire ecosystem is culturally sort of aligned to understand the English language, the Western sensibilities, and so on and so forth. So in Korea, you've seen this entire thing play out. How important is India as a development hub when you look at it as an international publisher and beyond? And how can we grow that more? What should we be doing?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think the game development studios which source the talents globally or work with the global outsourcing companies, they are now looking at maybe China as a go-to country for art outsourcing, or even some part of the core game developments. I think India has been maybe number 3 ish, but not as a like independent outsourcing house. As you are aware, there are like Ubisoft, EA, Rockstar, who has their internal studio sitting in India. But I think it has not really grown up so much for the last 5 to 6, 7 years. I think there has been a little bit of stagnating trends in terms of this service, development service perspective. So I think what I see, what I can see on the ground, which when I now spend like 3 years in India. So to be a little blunt, I think there has been like cap or limit on the in terms of the talent pool which is coming into the industry for whatever the reason. I mentioned a little bit about the general perception about the gaming industry as a serious career opportunity. Maybe that could be the one reason. The other reason could be also maybe there are less, model entrepreneurs who can inspire young people, which is also connected to the general perception issue. And also maybe there could be some lack of support from the governments, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that should be, maybe tackled in a continuous basis. I think that's, the reason why we couldn't see the, exponential growth, because now one of the very challenging factors for game development, especially for AAA game development, is the rising salary cost in developed countries like US. US is too expensive to hire any top quality engineers. But on PC and console games, the price tag on AAA game types is not really growing as much as the salary grows. So there are a lot of issues, there are a lot of factors which may benefit India as a game development hub, but I think we haven't seen many benefits realized for the country yet.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's talent, and how do we groom that talent to come into this industry? And talent not just at the development side, but also sort of have international talent come in who will set up the pipeline, train these guys, and try and upskill. You spoke about game art, and just in Noida, we used to have one of the larger game art companies a few years back, and haven't scaled, like you correctly said, in the last 6, 7 years. And people have started to move to Eastern Europe, to Vietnam, to China to find those avenues, and that should not happen because India is culturally a very art-rich country, and we have the development talent. So if I were to sort of swiggle around the globe and say, where is the place where there is art and coding, it probably would land in India, but we still need to do a lot to get that talent ecosystem into. And that's where, guys, some of the young folks here, there is tremendous opportunity if you step in. And like Sohn said, it is becoming increasingly unsustainable to do a large AAA in the US. And it's important that something like India steps up to do that. It'll do a favor to the global gaming world from that perspective, right? So this is interesting. And Rajan, you said something even more interesting the last time. You said about this larger creator ecosystem, the people streaming, and so on and so forth. In the esports ecosystem, we were working with a company in Dubai. They had sort of an esports of 3 types, right? Physical, mobile esports, and also handling the talent of esports. These guys had got the esports talent. They had got them their rights, and they were handling some of the biggest esports athletes from that perspective. And they were doing some 860 million streams, right? And compare that to something like in India, OTT pays about 50,000 crores to get the sports rights and gets to 300 million streams. And with games, and you would probably not even pay 1,000th of that and get to 800 million streams. So the potential of that, and the potential of that rubbing into the employment, into women empowerment, rural empowerment, people making money from all across. And I was seeing some stats on the entire creator ecosystem. Gaming is the top earning ecosystem there, right? So the second circle, as we talk about the core gaming, the development, which being the first circle, the second circle in itself can do a lot more to the economy, right? How do companies really lean into that and grow that ecosystem, which some of our neighbors like UAE, who don't have so many numbers, are doing? How do we grow that in India?
No, I think when you talk of the creator economy, it's got multiple advantages. I think this gender neutralization, it's a huge, it's because it's creating livelihoods for people, sitting at home, all kinds of people who are engaged in this creator economy. And we've seen that play out even beyond gaming. But when it comes to gaming specifically, the advantage is that, if you're a gamer with some level of influence and you have created some success, then a good sustainable livelihood becomes being a creator, because there are people who are watching you to of course, be entertained, but also to learn how to play the game better. And I think that's the beauty about gaming, because there is a learning aspect in the streaming, which is not really there in many other creator economy exercises. So we are deeply invested in building this economy out of India. And one thing we have realized, from a distinct difference between India and global, is that in India, because of the proliferation of mobile, young people, and video content consumption, YouTube, etc., is the highest somewhere in the world, right? So even a fraction of that actually makes it pretty significant. The key is to have games that people understand when they are watching, and I think that's the learning challenge that is there. Like we have one of the world's largest simulated cricket game, and we find that when people are watching simulated cricket, they don't need to understand the sport, right? Because as sport, they understand the rules, they understand that. As a matter of fact, we ran this exercise in the US, and I think we had a big advantage there, where they're saying that we will learn the sport by watching influencers and creators talk about it through the because they can have a game in front of them, learn how to play cricket, and still understand the sport through the hand-holding of a very strong creator or influencer. So there will, and I'm just giving one example, when you can understand a sport, it becomes much easier. But I think that is increasing, because as the number of gamers are increasing, the number of games they play is increasing. So the creator economy is, I think, is a unaccounted number in your slides, which I think is a force multiplier, what you rightly said, and it penetrates to tier 2, tier 3, because data access is cheaper. All of that is only going to get better, right? So yes, I completely believe that, and I think the one big advantage from India will be the vernacular influencer, right? Because it's not only the language, it's also the cultural connect, the connect you feel in a tier 2, tier 3 city when one of your own is teaching you something how to play and is generating a livelihood supported by a brand. It's a very encouraging thing for a young person, in a village or somewhere there. So I see that also becoming, very large as we move forward.
And hence the social aspiration being set, that's a very important point in that sense. And that's interesting, you said that, and because you also made a comment on the social fabric, right? Parents having to encourage, and your father having actually invested in a hardware and encouraged the entire ecosystem to come in. Now, when you look at the social fabric in this country, I think last 10 years has been different. People are exploring different careers. But still there is that perceptional issue from a gaming point of view. On the other hand, gaming helps a lot on the educational aspects. Gaming helps a lot, like you said, somebody can just pick up today on the animation side, what we call custom content development for education, for military training, and all of that is there. And some of those simulations are gaming from that perspective. How do we, in Korea, you've seen this perception changing. In India, what should we do to really make this social fabric happen? How do we get more people, like you said, to come into this and change the social fabric?
Yeah, I mean,
at least learning from Korea. I mean, I don't want you to speak Korean.
that is actually, it's a long-standing question to me. When I try to understand the country and do something for the country, India, so I understand the half of the picture. Maybe I have some learning or understanding from the Korea sort of history in industry, gaming industry. I also have some understanding, limited understanding, how India has evolved for the last few years around gaming industry. But I think I can just try to give the best answer I can think about. So I think overall it would need more time. We don't really need to mention about how society slowly accepted film as a proper entertainment.
As a
When it was first started, people might have, it is too vulgar or it is too, I don't know, too sensual or sexual in a way. So I think gaming will also need such time for being accepted as a proper mainstream entertainment. I think in India, it's been only 5, 6 to 7 years. And also the mobile platform itself, it's a little difficult to be in the mainstream because generally you enjoy the contents on your own. Parents, if you don't watch YouTube from gaming creators, they would never have a chance to understand what is gaming. So there is some limitation in that regard. So that's why I mentioned that through like proper events like India Gaming Show, we have to make it look like a mainstream entertainment through all different type of channels. I mean, maybe we try to make certain contents about the gaming show, put up in a network TV or JioCinema. JioCinema might have a biggest audience in any OTT. So I think that's one way to do it. On the other hand, I think it is also encouraged to incorporate gaming as a part of the education. I mean, as you mentioned, that it can be, I think, maybe not necessarily on the mobile or tablet, but on PC, if you want to, in the old days, if you want to run a game that you have to know how to install the OS, how to install the software, when there is a bug, how to fix the bug, and etc. Actually, that gives you a lot of motivation for you to understand the hardware and software in old days. So I think it might not be the same case these days. Now software and OS become much more frictionless. But I think you have to maybe think about how we can incorporate that as a part of education from the primary. Maybe not just enjoying the content itself, but how that content works on the hardware and software level. I think that can be integrated as a part of the education. I think that could be the one way.
Wow, fantastic. So how do you ingrain that into education? How do you sort of change that cultural belief? And like you said, it takes some time for people to accept, but what we are doing here in IDGS and many other forums, bringing out the right aspects definitely helps. And that also shifts us to the other part of it. Then some time back, somewhere between 2008 to say 2016, when I used to do some of this, we used to say PC and PC is about 30%, 35% of the gaming ecosystem. And we know why it was driven, because you had pirated CDs. You could go, go to Khan Market, or you go to one of the local, railway stations, and you get 50 rupees a CD, and we've all seen that. There was a lot of pushback from the industry, rightly so. We curbed that piracy. That's not so much today, but we've not replaced it with other easily accessible content, which is why today when I put up the graph, it almost hurts me when I say it's only a few small pie is PC console and 90+% is mobile. What can we do to really accelerate that part, both the hardware and the PC console gaming part of it?
So, of course, Sohn works much larger and has seen great success with PC, particularly in Korea. And my thing is what really propelled that entire generation was high-speed internet connectivity into homes, right? I think, therefore, when we talk of gaming and we talk of gaming, game development, content, IP creation, the ecosystem that supports it is very important. The robust infrastructure. I mean, now if you see this time, when India talks about in the last budget, our investment in infrastructure, it's gone up 5-fold in 10 years, right? From 2 lakh crores to now 11 lakh crores. When we talk of how much of that is towards digital public infrastructure, while financial services and all, we don't talk significantly amount there. But I think it's the absolute right time for India to massively accelerate its investments into this thing. And this will come both on the back of government, which is very unique anywhere in the world, because many places it's the private enterprises that have gone and invested and done that. But I think it's going to be a combination of public and private, and then the innovations that go on top of that to make that happen. So to me, once that happens, you will see a far greater jump in the hardwares, the ability, because that experience, and today also gaming is becoming platform independent in a way, right? You can leave a game somewhere and you can move somewhere. You only talked of cloud gaming. So, I think it is the entire ecosystem, but the idea is how do you consume and play content, or engage in, say, esports at a global level, using a platform that is globally accepted, right, to a much larger thing. So in that light, and I think your statistics showed a 3-4% growth already, and we also power, say, the Steam's platform, last mile, monetization in India. And I must say that the growth is very significant, right? It is very significant, but still not out there. We will configure for Indian festivals, localization. That also adds a lot today. A lot more culturally relevant content coming onto PC is beginning to happen. As a matter of fact, the aspiration, as you said, from good AAA titles for console and PC going from India, which are culturally unique or native to India, which will bring more gamers again into that ecosystem, compared to the rest of are all triggers. But I think it's going to require many things to come together. But like any entertainment, right? A hit is a hit and a miss is a miss. And the gaming industry, interestingly, is like, Bollywood used to wait for the Friday to go and see a movie, and everybody's waiting. Is this going to be a success? Not going to be? Those who have seen good success are more likely to see success. I think that whole culture is now coming into gaming also. At least I'm getting that sense from India. And globally, it's always been there. So good time to strengthen that from a narrative perspective.
Interesting you say that, because you very correctly said the ecosystem needs to sort of come together, and it's broadband with the ecosystem is the thing. And when you do panels like this and you're hitting the noon, you have to be slightly controversial, otherwise you can get the attention. But I really want to ask you, what can we do? And I'll mention 2-3 opportunities to really interest the global publishers and also the guys to really look into India. You guys are doing a fantastic job, and that's why I'm asking you this question, because with mobile PUBG, you opened up an entirely new market, which even for global guys wasn't, you spoke about infrastructure. Today we have 2.5 lakh gram panchayats connected. Even if you take the dark fiber out, you have about 2 lakh villages connected with the highest end fiber, right? And the government is looking out to say who can provide services, gaming, and everything on top of that. CTV universe, I talked about smart TVs, going to be about 120 million in the next 3-4 years, right? So another huge ecosystem. And then when you look at cloud gaming, I'm mentioning things which are unique to India. So with so much of opportunity, what should we really do to get global publishers interested? And India works when you have the sachet pricing, as they say, right? So you don't sell something at $100, you sell something at like $2, $5. How do you really get that going in India?
Yeah, so before answering that question, I just want to quickly revisit what you and Rajan talked about. So we have like maybe 500, 600 million smartphone devices in India. I think smartphone is a great platform to enjoy the contents and do like transaction and etc. etc. But the limitation of smartphone device is it is mainly consumption device or transaction device. It's not production device. So when we had only PCs at home, it's a consumption device, but it's also production device. You can switch your role between consumer and also producer, which is not happening easily on mobile devices. So I think still, maybe if I'm someone who can make a decision or form a policy, I would still push someone to think about how we can provide PC, the access to PC, to the grassroots level, whether it's a primary school students in the tier 2, tier 3, or rural area. I think still it is needed so that you can have the way of thinking or attitude, not just as a consumer of the content, but also the producer of the content. So I think that's something that India should work on from policy point of view, education point of view. So that's one comment I want to make. So from the second question, the other question you have just mentioned, I think Rajan would have also same feeling these days. We receive a lot of calls from global publishers who want to understand about the India market. Which was maybe the case for the last few years, but I think the number of or the intensity of their interest has been much higher, much larger. But what they still feel little like little wondering or little puzzled or confused about India market is they don't really understand why something is really happening. I mean, the overall market size, it's growing. But as we are all aware, the top 5, 10 games are actually taking large chunk of the revenue or large chunk of the users. Generally in other markets, the tails are a little fatter than India market. In India, the tails is pretty much slim. So maybe it's not very sustainable for them to service the game. So they want to understand more about the behavior of Indian consumers. They want to understand what is the trend, when is the right timing to enter the market, and et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's still very difficult question, or there are not enough players to answer that question. So I think there are still lack of local publishers who can work with a global publisher or global developers. So that's, I mean, so we are a global company, but we also at the same want to position ourselves as a local publisher. So we are working on this direction too. So sort of we are also trying to educate global publisher to understand the market and form a perspective about India market in a like, you know, more sophisticated way. So.
Fantastic. I think you've been fabulous point in mobile being the production device. We've seen that in the short video ecosystem. Suddenly, you know, a few of them, the short video guys in TikTok put some tools to produce video, and suddenly the entire thing became a $1 trillion ecosystem in that sense. Understanding of local publishing ecosystem, the other thing that you said, is very, very important. And what are the consumers doing? And we have about 3-4 minutes on the clock. It's a good time to go to the consumer and really ask them, guys, if you have some questions, you know, you don't get many chances with an eclectic panel like this. What is the consumer doing, and what are your challenges? Any questions for the panel from this side? Yeah, please.
So we come, yeah, sure. So we are from Lazario Studios. So we are like a group of 40 peoples from students, super seniors, max super seniors, and working professionals to work together so we can get projects from freelancing websites and from global clients and local clients and everyone. So what doubt I have especially is, like, we have a certain cash flow amount right now. So we are expanding our cash flow so we can create our own games with like proper methods, because when we create like our own games with just like your co-founder, your co-founder, your co-founder, they will leave eventually. But we provide like actual salary to them and work on our own games, we can do the thing. So what we actually need is, we need the support of how we can grow this thing into a even better business, how to get the more connections and clients. And also we have like connections with colleges, so we can promote this course into a degree certificate and master certificates. So there are some colleges in India who are already doing this. Some of them are like ICAT and Backstage Pass and then Da Vinci, those colleges. We are also actually entering into this business. How we are entering into this business is,
hence the question you're asking is that?
How we can, how we said ourselves, right? So there are many peoples like this. How they can get more clients and get more connections and get more support from bigger peoples.
Wonderful. And I think in that itself, he has summarized a lot of things. So he's saying, how do I get more talent from the colleges and give them sustainable salaries? How do I get more business from the broader ecosystem? How do I have capital and cash flows to maintain this entire thing? In a nutshell, I am doing something as a social venture. How do I grow? Right?
You know, I think great effort, and I think India has a lot of examples like what you rightly said. You know, one thing we got to keep in mind, that the industry or the gaming industry globally, especially I'm talking more to, is a $180 billion, $200 billion industry around, been there for 50 years, right? So it's like any other industry, there is a lot of best practices, track record, science, you know, psychology, so many things that have gone in that we tend to underestimate, you know, with the capabilities and capacity that we have. So of course there is no shortcut better than getting a great hit. You know, you get a small group together, you get something that goes viral. It shows that you have the potential for virality, and you will get, you know, people coming to work with you because you're demonstrating some capability. My suggestion would be demonstrate something unique from your team that you think a larger company would want, right? And I think it's important to think about it in that context, because many large companies and others really look for that creative talent, because that comes not necessarily, there's no structure to that as much, or a process that is efficient, that is outcome driven, which has imbibed a lot of the learnings that probably you've had from college, and a good team that is able to deliver on that. The challenge of getting business across that definitely remains, but there couldn't be a better time today. Like Sohn mentioned and Raghav is mentioning, many companies are looking at India, both either to get talent to help them support their global businesses, or come into India. So there couldn't be a better time, but you got to get yourself a little more organized and structured around that. I think capital investment in good teams is something that all of us are looking for all the time, and there will be many opportunities for you and your teams to kind of pitch for that. But I don't know, Sohn, you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I cannot fully understand. I can understand that you have these 2-3 issues, which sounds more like a fundamental sort of issues you are having when you are running a business, like game development house. But I just want to give you one sort of suggestion. A humble suggestion is that while you are working on this like business like model, but I want you to be a little bit more ambitious about creating your own IPs, as he just briefly mentioned that. I think that will actually give you a lot more upside. I understand that it's a very tough thing to do. Like it might not happen eventually, even though you work on this very hard. But I think that actually will give you a lot of upside, and also it will bring more talents to your studio when you have some attractive IPs as one of the aspiration where young people can have some attachment to. Yeah.
Wonderful. I think a few things that they've said, I don't know whether you picked it, but one of the things Rajan is saying is, these are 3 different models: B2B development, IP development, right? And then doing as a community of gamers trying to do 3 different models. And you rightly said there is a cash flow, which is the core of it.
Our major projects are like from the VR B2B thing, and for prototyping for online clients, we do the entire prototype game from modeling to publishing, everything. Publishing they will take care, but the packaging of mobile, PC and those things. And then secondly, Shyam asked one question. Can you please repeat it? You asked one question to us, right?
He said of the 3, what is the...
Yes. He asked for us to develop our own games.
Yeah.
So what we are right now doing is, we are likely following like a 80-20 principle. 80% service. So from the service thing, we get a revenue. So 20% we focus on the product thing.
Correct. And which is what animation companies have struggled with. So it took them 10 years to switch from services. They then went into small things like small services-based co-production. From co-production, they went into larger production. From larger productions with grants, they went into complete production. So there is an entire shift, and we can talk about it offline, of how to progress in that ecosystem. Animation companies have shown a way from going from services to becoming a IP producer from that perspective. Surely we'll catch up that with anybody else. Yes, please.
Thanks. Can you all hear me? Oh, great.
Yeah.
My question, I want to follow up on what he asked about the 20%. My conversations and my company's conversations with a lot of game developers and publishers in India who want to build for India is that existing tools and infrastructure to build it out is cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
Because you charge in dollars, but then you're going to charge your consumers in rupees. And the arbitrage is too deep for them to meet a business case. If I am an investor and I want to invest in companies, am I more comfortable right now investing in infrastructure, by which I mean dev tools, tech stacks, distribution channels, than I am in investing in a pure play game development or a game publisher?
Right. Invest in infrastructure.
It's like, will I invest in a movie? I came to that, right? Because today, game IPs, with whether it's Discovery, whether it is this, it is an IP, it is a content, and a game developer is doing that, right? A publisher kind of hedges that by finding, you know, the right dynamics around it. What has actually become prohibitively expensive today is acquiring a consumer. There's a lot of clutter, it's expensive, and if the economics of your LTV versus CAC and all those don't fit, you know, it's very hard to see any studio, and therefore you see around the world there have been job cuts and you know, new projects being put on hold because it is hard to create a successful new game in the world today. I mean, much harder than it has ever been, right? And so that is a challenge now, whether your risk appetite is for that kind of a portfolio or you want to play a safer infrastructure level. I think in India that infrastructure level opportunity is much larger even today because we have multi-segments when it comes to consumers, right? We have a, you know, they say there are 4 Indias, right? There is the bottom 200 million, then the next few 100 million, the next, and the good part is when the shift happens, a few 100 million will move, right? And each of these will transition, right? So you have an opportunity that your segment someone might move into a higher segment, but a new segment of 100 million will come into that. So the infrastructure's longevity, according to me, is much higher if you're able to view it that way. So yes, those are opportunities, but again, there are few you need to build with good teams, and I think that stays. But it depends on the risk appetite, and you know, one is more a portfolio kind of play, one could be a more concentrated play. So I'm not sure on how you're looking, but that's how at least we look at some of these opportunities.
And just to add to that, I think you made very valid points. Now, in KBITS in Bangalore, we tried to develop an infrastructure play for gaming, for animation. The key to that was giving it on a SaaS model where startups could come and access that and pay for it from that perspective. Now, if I divide that infrastructure into 2 parts, and first of all, development infrastructure also into 2 parts. One part is what you said, the DevOps tools, the cloud, the, in animation, the rendering and all of that on one side of the perspective. That the struggle that you will find as an investor is that the ecosystem of startups using that are very small. So unless you co-opt 2 people, government and the IT providers who provide those, the model will not sustain from that perspective. On the other side, the real need of the industry is the pipeline. The large and mid-core AAA pipeline is not there. And that pipeline is extremely costly to set up, and it is also a work of art. It matures over a period of time, right? If you can get some of the international experts, come here, set up the pipeline, and then convert that into a SaaS model, that will be fantastic. That will hyper grow the IP development in this country. The other side is what Rajan mentioned. If I were to take an infrastructure pick, I would say on the consumer infrastructure, cloud gaming, others. So I have something on the cloud, suddenly 950 million mobile become, you know, high-end gaming infrastructure. If I can invest in things like that, that will bring the next 500 million into the ecosystem. So there are interesting picks, but India, as always, has to be done very well because there is an ecosystem which is not grown that much from that perspective. The lady there, yes.
Yeah. So I'm Dolly Basin. I run a consulting firm, and I've been into e-publishing for a long time. And my choice of getting into publishing, I launched the first software product from India way back in '92 to win an international award. Over the years, I've been concentrating on education, especially learning content, not for school students or this thing alone, but also for professionals. Because lifelong learning, nobody seems to be addressing. And lifelong learning basically requires a lot of gamification. And that's the area that I have been looking at from the professional education point of view, as well as in terms of, so my experience with the BFSI sector, I have impacted something close to about 10 lakh professionals that I have really had professional certifications for insurance programs, how to sell to a high net worth insurance and things like that. Right. This thing is that inclusive education is something that I'm currently working on. And inclusive education from the school educational infrastructure, I find the CBSE report says that there are almost 40% of the students who have, 10% of the students who have learning disabilities. Now, these learning disabilities, out of which 40% of it is autism. Autism is something which is a neurological deficiency. Now, you can't really cure that, but it can be managed through learning. That's the focus area where games can really play a big part. And I would like to really know from the August panel, has there been any work in that area? This is one area that I am currently researching to really see how we could develop it. Contacted with special educators across the globe, and I'm working very closely with some of them we've developed a prototype and tested it in 8 cities in India, and I see that there is a lot of merit in doing that. I'd like to know, especially from Sohn and Navani ji, as to how we could really bring that ecosystem, because that's an immediate need that we have. And we have a huge target audience ready to spend, and there's not much that needs to be really put in there.
Fantastic question. So gamification for education, especially autism in children, as an opportunity, what can we do as a community to bring something like that into the forefront, right?
So to be honest, I haven't spent too much time on this topic. I just have come across maybe a couple of proposals from education gaming company from Korea who wants to participate in our CSR initiatives. So I have very limited and basic understanding, but I have some understanding that actually gamification works for like students or young kids who have some disabilities in mental health. So I think it has shown some proof points, but my understanding is that even in Korea or any other countries, I haven't seen any sizable business around it. Sizable means like at least 5 million, 10 million per year, which go into the which can go into the direction of like becoming growth stage company, etc. So I don't have that knowledge, but I think it has shown some proof points.
No, so gamification in learning, I think, is very clear, and new technologies, especially when you see like augmented reality and all of that, because then you're actually gamifying learning and also helping create many actual live environments, etc., that you can superimpose. So that's very clear. But to your point on autism, I think what we have seen some good studies is that because there are two aspects. I think one is the creative aspect and second is the social aspect. So gaming is a very I would say non-obstructive way for people to socialize, especially autistic children. And I think there have been some studies done where games have helped them create friends, create circles, etc., social networks through games, because games tend to enable that. And second is creativity enhancement, which comes very easily through gamification, because there is that opportunity as well. So I think these two skills in particular, from what I understand, I mean, again, I'm sure there'll be a lot more data and scientific things there, but I know I've seen games being used from those two angles for autistic children at least.
Absolutely, I think fantastic. This entire thing of what Sohn pointed out on scale, the need is obviously there. Gamification in education, big need. In autism is again a need. The trick lies in, can you form an ecosystem? Wherever I have found gamification work, you spoke about BFSI, you spoke about health services. If, for example, when the health watches came up, they independently couldn't do much on the health ecosystem. But when they tied up with health providers and tied up with the insurance companies, suddenly it became a multi-billion-dollar ecosystem. So how can you use gamification and tie up that ecosystem, I think is going to be one of the keys for you to scale. But what you're working on is amazing, and I think we'd love to hear more about it from that perspective.
Thank you very much for the...
And now I think we'll have to call it a wrap, but before I do that, I think this is about we've already contributing $1 trillion to the economy, right? We need to go to $5-10 billion. If the government were to say, I have $1 billion, but I can only invest in one thing in gaming, what would you recommend that to be?
You're talking of the government.
Yeah, or if you have $1 billion, I don't mind that either.
No, I think, see, from a government, the biggest investment that needs to give is to build one very predictive, framework that to say that yes, we support, gaming and, particularly indications like we talked of the Prime Minister meeting some of the sports athletes and, saying, I think that is the first is the visibility, right? And I think then the amount, the money that needs to go in, can go into multiple, of course, infrastructure, which we discussed. So it can't be only one thing, and the ecosystem that enhances skills, capabilities, and the ability for more people to get involved into the ecosystem. See, I truly believe human beings are very opportunistic, entrepreneurial. We need to have something with us that enables us to get a starting point, right? And therefore, education is that, a skill that enables you to get into the gaming. And we've talked of 100 such skills. So if the government can tell every young person in this country that, pick one skill here and we are willing to train you. Here are 100 skills, for example. We'll train you. I think that could be the best $1 billion spent.
The framework and the education, right? And Sean, if I twist it around saying as a company, $1 billion on something in India in gaming, yeah, what would that be? I mean, just as a pick.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if I may, I want to also add one point to what just Rajan said. I mean, education. Education is important. I mean, I just made an example about IIT Delhi students. Even at that top engineering college, the wannabe game developers have no access to gaming laptop, which sounds a little like strange to me. So whether it's setting up proper PC lab in every school, like at least at the high school level or middle school level, I think that could be one idea that I want to bring. So putting aside that, as a company, where should I put 1 billion? Maybe I think that's something we already starting to do. I think incubating program. I mean, it doesn't really require 1 billion, but I think if we have more financial and human resource support, I think we want to size up to the level that we can. Now we are targeting to have like 6 to 8 incubators in our program. Yes. But I think if we can have more mentorship pool, not just from KRAFTON, but also from other global publishers and developers with a lighted mind, I think we want to size up, like, why not 50 or 100 incubators every year, so that that could be
lovely.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could do that, Sean, that we the most powerful ecosystem. If you could bring some capital, but more than capital, the incubation ecosystem, where some of the development companies here, publishing companies can learn from the global, I think that would fast forward this entire ecosystem. So lovely. I think it's been nothing short of a masterclass. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for spending the time. And lovely to see both of your companies and the IDGS community doing so much. Thank you so much.